Welcome to game number 6 of the World Chess Championship match. Game 6 is notable in the history of chess for a very combative play and typically where one player can stand above the other player or one player starts to collapse. There was this great game in Game 6 between Bobby Fischer and Boris Spassky. Game 6 was considered one of the best games of all time. Recommend you check it out. And in Game 6 of Magnus versus Jan Nepomniachtchi, there was also a thrilling, very long match between them, which resulted in Magnus's victory. So we're all hoping that this happens in today's match. Ding, with the white pieces, is he going to show something to Gukesh's black? So far, Gukesh has been extremely solid with the block pieces, and Ding only having a slight opportunity to get a potential edge, but nothing really significant has come. Let's see if Ding was able to get an advantage and a win today with the white pieces. We have d4, knight to f6, bishop to f4, the London system, and Gukesh plays d5. After pawn to e3, we have pawn to e6, knight to f3, and pawn c5. Pawn to c3, very classic setup, very solid. Ding commented after the game that he likes systems where it's not as combative in the opening and he's almost playing white as black, meaning that he's not playing for this one-edge tempo, but he's playing a very solid system. After bishop d6, bishop b5 check. Bishop b5 check, a nice move to insert in between, let's say, knight d2 or bishop takes on d6 to force black to make a decision. If you play knight d7, you lose the bishop on d6. If you play bishop d7, potentially you have the problem of bishop takes on d6, bishop takes on b5, and then bishop takes on c5, winning a pawn. So Gukesh definitely knows theory at this point, and he plays the move knight c6. We have captures, creating a weakness on the c6 and c5 square. At the same time, black now has the bishop pair. If black is able to get this move in bishop a6 with like safety, then black will have a nice edge and white will not be able to castle. Ding plays bishop takes on d6. We have queen takes on d6, and now queen to a4. Stopping black from playing bishop to a6, but also there's a nice hidden idea with this move queen a4. After black castles, we have queen to a3, pinning the pawn to the queen on d6. Something to mention is that black does have the option to take at this point. C takes d, and after c takes d, the problem is you cannot push the pawn so easily. And even if you castle, the pawn is not going to be able to be pushed. So after castles, pawn c5, again we have this move queen to a3, and if you try to defend the pawn, white can continue to pile up pressure on the c-pawn, taking advantage of this pin. So back to the game, after queen a4, black immediately castles, and we see queen to a3. You have to deal with the pressure against the pawn. White for the moment is threatening to win a pawn, and this could be decisive amount of material. After knight to e4, defending the pawn, we have knight to d2. Delaying castling to try to put as much problems to black on this c5 pawn. After pawn to e5, we have knight takes, eliminating the defender of the pawn, pawn takes, and queen takes on c5. Gukesh is down a pawn, but white has yet to castle. For this reason, Gukesh decides to keep the queens on the board, which is a very important strategic theme. If you are down material, do not trade queens unless there's a very, very clear reason or there's no other possibility to play. In this case, you cannot trade queens. If you take as black, you're basically handing a phenomenal position for white. White is up a pawn. It's a very static structure, so the bishop's not going to be able to find some dynamic play, and we have very easy moves. White could even bring the king up to e2, put pressure on the pawn, bring the knight to c4 to d6, and take command over the central d-file. So this is why Gukesh played the move queen g6, avoiding the queen trade, temporarily giving up a pawn on e5, but Gukesh would get a ton of counterplay with the move queen takes g2. So Ding wants to finish his development as fast as possible here, and he plays knight to d2. We have queen takes on g2, restoring material equality and white castles, and black is now up material. At the cost of a few tempi, 1, 2, 3, black is now up material, but white's king has gotten safe. In addition to that, the g file is now an open file for white's rooks to create some tremendous amount of counterplay if black's not careful. White captured on e5. We have rook to b8. Rook to b8 is a really nice move. When I was analyzing this position, I was thinking, how exactly is black going to stop this knight takes e4 or even knight c4, knight d6 idea? And the pawn on a7 is also hanging. So this position is less about holding on to the material at each moment if you're able to generate enough activity and enough counterplay with your pieces. If the rook stays on a8, it's not doing anything productive to attack the king, and white is going to either take this pawn or generate some play of their own with rook g1. So rook b8, a really nice move by Gukesh, and after knight c4, the knight cannot take on e4 here because now that the rook moved, the b2 square is covered. Ding plays knight c4, developing the knight, and the knight defends the pawn, and we have bishop e6, threatening the knight, and therefore threatening the pawn on b2. We have rook to d2, attacking the queen, and queen to f3, moving to safety and counterattacking. Rook to e1, defending the pawn. If you play a move like rook g1, the problem is after takes, the queen can win the pawn on e3. So after rook to e1, we have bishop takes, queen takes, the rook defends the pawn, and queen to f5, targeting the pawn on e5. Ding captures on c6, we have queen takes on e5, and queen to d5, offering a queen trade. It was at this moment in the game that Gukesh realized that Ding is not playing for a win. Sure, queen d5 is an excellent move. You centralize the queen, you take control over the only fully open file on the board, and you offer a queen trade. But then again, after the move queen e7, Ding plays the move queen d6, offering another queen trade. So Gukesh has a situation where his opponent is consistently satisfied with being able to go into a drawn endgame. In the last game, Ding had an opportunity to push for an edge, and just in this game as well, he had an opportunity to push for an edge. Gukesh plays the move queen g5, avoiding the repetition and potential repetition. If we just have the moves repeat a few times, the game will end in a draw. And Ding plays the move queen d5, offering queen trade. We have queen to e7, queen d6, queen g5, queen d5, and I bet you can guess that the game ends in a draw, with Gukesh playing with the black pieces, playing the move queen to e7. But this is not what happened. Gukesh plays the move queen to h4. And with this move, he's saying, I don't want to draw. I want to keep playing. I still believe there's a lot of play in this position. I want to see what you got. You're not going to get away so easily with just an easy and simple draw. From this perspective, Gukesh is playing very ambitiously. From another perspective, he does have the black pieces. There is no advantage for black. If anything, white is the one with the advantage. And maybe he's taking a little bit of risk with this move, maybe too much risk. In the interview after the game, Gukesh said that he felt like he had a lot of play in this position. And he also said that he really loves just playing, and so he wanted to keep the game going. We have rook to d1, pawn to g6, just making some room for the king, queen to e5, rook to e8, attacking the queen and defending the pawn, and queen g3, offering another queen trade. After queen to h5, we have queen to f4, and queen switches sides to the a5 square, attacking the pawn on a2. After pawn to a3, we have queen to b5, rook to d4, and queen to e2. Rook to d2, attacking the queen, and queen f3, offering white a queen trade in a favorable circumstance. If you take, the pawn takes back, and the e3 pawn is under attack, plus the pawn on f3 could be quite dangerous. Ding did not take. He played king c2. We have queen takes on f4. We do get a trade of queens, but now Gukesh is able to get a connected pass pawn in the center of the board. So this entire time, it's really Gukesh who's attempting at least to play for a win. And after pawn to h4, we have pawn to e3. Something to mention is why not simply play the move rook to d7, and you could. And black, I think, has to be quite careful here. If you play the move, for example, rook f7, after takes, and let's say you want to get a trade of rooks, thinking that you're the one with the passed pawn along the e-file, it can easily backfire because after rook e7, takes, white has these 3 pawns on the queen side, and white is actually much better, if not winning the game. So in the game, after pawn to h4, even though rook d7, I think, could have put some pressure on Gukesh. Gukesh probably wouldn't have gone for that line. Definitely not. After e3 is played, we have rook to e2, rook to e7, covering the 7th rank. The pawn on e3 is an asset, but it can also be very vulnerable if white is in time to attack it and capture it. King d3 attacking the pawn, you have to play rook to e8, holding onto the pawn, and pawn to h5, creating a weakness on the kingside pawn structure. We have captures, rook to d5, pawn to h4, rook takes on f5, rook gives a check, king moves, and king g7. Rook gives a check, king goes to h8, not stepping forwards, of course, not running into some problems on, let's say, the h5 square or h4 square, but goes king to h8, and after rook to e2, king to g7, rook g2, king h8, rook g2, rook to e2, king g7. The position has been reached 3 times, and the game ends in a draw. Okay, what to say about this match? From Gukesh's perspective, extremely solid with the black pieces. Ding getting a very minimal edge out of the opening, and again, not really pushing for a win. What's going to happen in the coming games? It's going to start to heat up. There's only a limited number of games left, which means we're getting closer and closer to those rapid tie breaks. In lower time controls, lots of mistakes can happen, even by the top players in the world. We saw this against Ding versus Jan Nepomniachtchi before the tie breaks were reached. We saw them both play and make serious mistakes under some time control problems. In addition to that, we saw Magnus versus Fabiano, where Magnus was able to seriously take advantage of the lower time controls. So, at this point, it's tough to say if Ding or Gukesh are going to get another win. If they do, before we reach the tie breaks, it will definitely make things a lot more interesting. But even then, I think that if we do reach the tie breaks, it is going to be madness on the board. Both players are at some point going to get into time trouble, and there's going to be just chaos ensuing on the board, which I'm really looking forward to. So let's see how the games go. The way they're going right now is Ding is not really pushing for much in the position. He's waiting for Gukesh to make some unforced errors. Gukesh is playing ambitiously, trying to avoid draws, trying to get as much as he can out of the games. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you in the next game.